Today we're talking potty talk. No, but seriously, we're talking about toilets and something that seems so small, if done wrong, can actually make a really big negative impact over the lifetime of your investment property. Toilets are one of the most underrated aspects of an investment property. Very rarely do we give it any attention. We normally just throw a toilet in when we need a new toilet, but we don't really think about it. Today, hopefully we can talk through some action items to take before putting in a toilet so that you can save yourself in the long run and make sure you maximize your profits on your investment property. There's three things I really want to focus on. The first thing is toilet clogs. We all get toilet clogs in our properties, but if we take some steps in the beginning, we can minimize the clogs we get later on down the road. The second thing is water usage. Toilets can run and cause a lot of extra water usage, which will result in higher water bills. And then the third thing I want to talk about is toilets themselves and making sure that they last a long time and we're not coming out a few years down the road to make repairs to them. Before we do all that, before we get into all the three different parts of this segment, I want to take a quick trip to Home Depot, just go through some of the plumbing aisles, see what they have.
So huge selection, almost too many toilets. Actually, it's a little overwhelming. On the right, they start with the high-end Kohler toilets for $200 to $300+, and then they work themselves down into what I would consider the more reasonable rental property toilets. Glacier Bay is kind of the price point where I think we want to be as real estate investors for rental properties. They're right around $100. They seem to have a selection that something should work for you in that price range. There's a lot of new technology around the flushing mechanics of these toilets. So take a look, find something high powered that doesn't break the bank.
The first aspect of toilets I want to talk through in detail is toilet clogs. You get them, I get them, and most definitely our tenants are going to get toilet clogs. So we can't eliminate them altogether, but we can limit the number of clogs that we're getting by doing some things on the front end. For me, one of the biggest ways to do this is by making sure that when we buy a toilet, it has enough flushing power. One way to make sure enough flushing power is to make sure we have enough water going down the toilet. And a lot of these newer toilets are using less and less water, which is great. It conserves water, but in some situations, it can limit the power that the toilet has. It isn't always tied one-to-one, but in general, I'm not too concerned on using a 1/10 or 2/10 extra gallons per flush. They're all way better than what they were 20 years ago when they were using 3 to 5 gallons per flush. So the government's cracked down on that. No matter what, you get a new toilet, it's going to be better than it used to be. But don't skimp on this. Another area to get more flushing power is by the flush valve hole, the flapper size that you have. Standard is 2 inches. I really try to, when possible, get 3-inch size toilet flappers. That just means there's a bigger hole, more water can come down. Sometimes the bigger flush valve, the 3-inch, also comes with a higher price tag on the toilet. So you got to be careful. You don't want to go too crazy with spending more than you need to. But those are some areas that I try to take advantage of to make sure I have a big flush valve hole, 3-inch, and then also make sure I'm not trying to get the least amount of water per gallon that might actually limit the flushing power. And then when I'm in the aisles, I'm looking, normally each brand has a couple models, and it'll call out this model may have superior flushing power compared to another model. So I will go and always choose the one that calls out that they have a better flushing power. There's also some things online where they test different toilets. If you really want to go on it, if you really want to get serious about this and see what the test results were and what the flushing power was. The second aspect of toilets we're going to talk through is the water consumption. And I'm not talking about the water consumption per flush. I'm talking about water running with your toilets. We've all been there as well. This happens all the time, and it's normally tied to the flapper. It sometimes has to do with something called the fill valve, which is also in the tank, but the flapper is the rubber material that opens and closes when you push the lever down or the handle down. And what I want to talk to you about is how you can make your flappers last longer. So there's a couple things to point out. One, make sure you get a high quality flapper. There's normally a couple levels in the store when you go. You'll see the basic, the standard, and then they'll say long lasting, and then they'll say super, super long lasting, chlorine resistant. You want to get those. Get the best you can get there. Trust me, it's worth it. It might be a couple extra dollars, but it's worth it. Especially in these city apartments that have high chlorine levels treated in their water, the chlorine really eats down at the rubber. And if you spend extra money up front, it'll be worth it in the long run. Additionally, another thing, you probably don't do this in your rentals, but for your own house, some people put the chlorine tablet in the tank so that you don't have to clean the inside of the toilet as much. Those chlorine tablets also really wear down the flappers. There's toilets now that are coming out that actually don't have flappers at all. They have different technology. There's some like vortex technology, some power flush technology, some siphon. We can look it up. I can show examples, but there's all different kinds of things. I'm not super familiar with them. I know that they work pretty good. I've tried some, but I don't know how long they'll last, if they'll break down too, if there'll be issues. Maybe different issues, but maybe issues similar to flappers. So what my advice here is, just get a good flapper. It'll help you, because if you don't, I guarantee at some point your toilet's going to start running. You're going to then have a high water bill. Maybe it's a single family home and you can bill that back to the tenant. Maybe your apartments are sub-metered, but a lot of times they're not. So do what you can. Try to conserve the water by using good flappers. The last aspect, number 3 here, is the toilets themselves. We want them to last as long as they can possibly last. And they should really last for a long time. Toilets are almost indestructible, but we see it over and over again where we're getting work orders for loose toilets, wobbly toilets, and what that normally comes back to is the installation of the toilet itself. So what I'm encouraging you to do is when you install your toilet, do it right. Take your time. Hire someone that knows what they're doing. It mostly comes down to the flange, which we'll show you here an image of. The flange is the attachment in the floor that attaches the toilet to the floor. And that flange needs to be in there real nice and tight. It needs to be secured. It needs to be anchored down. It needs to be on a level surface too. So we'll show a couple of videos of what this should look like and some images of how you should do it. But trust me, have a level floor, have a good solid flange. There's a couple different levels of flanges you can buy in the store. Again, this is another example. Don't skimp. Don't get the all plastic one. Get the one with the metal frame around the top. Make sure it's screwed in with non-rust screws. And then you actually get a wax ring that goes on top of that. So in closing, toilets, again, they're not something we spend a ton of money on in the beginning when we buy them. They're not something we spend a lot of time on thinking about. But what I want you to take away from today is maybe we should spend just a little bit more on it, and maybe we should spend a little bit more time, because if you don't, I promise you, over the next 10 to 15 years, you're gonna have some issues with your toilets that maybe could have been avoidable. All right, thanks for tuning in.